The outpost was eerily quiet, the only sounds the faint hum of the generators and the labored breathing of the survivors. Dr. Elena Kale sat hunched over the lab console, her fingers trembling as she typed. The equipment flickered intermittently, the magnetic interference from the tunnels wreaking havoc on their systems. Despite her exhaustion, she forced herself to focus, desperate to understand the entity they had encountered and the grotesque transformations they had witnessed. Behind her, Captain Vance paced the room, his jaw tight, his movements restless. "We need a plan," he said, breaking the silence. "Something to keep this contained." Garza, seated near the doorway, leaned his head back against the wall. He hadn't said much since they'd escaped the tunnels, his eyes hollow, his hands twitching like he was holding something invisible. "How do you contain something that's already inside us?" he muttered. Elena stopped typing. "What do you mean, inside us?" Garza let out a shaky laugh. "You don't feel it? The pressure? It's like something's crawling around in my head." Before Elena could respond, the lights dimmed, plunging the room into semi-darkness. The air grew heavy, charged with an oppressive energy. A deep rhythmic pulse emanated from the walls, syncing with the vibrations under their feet. Elena's stomach twisted as a terrible realization struck her. The tunnels weren't just below them. Their influence was spreading. "Vance," she began, but her words died in her throat as the first vision struck. The walls of the outpost shimmered, the sterile metal flickering like the surface of the portal. The sheen spread outward, covering every surface until the room dissolved into a surreal landscape. Elena stumbled back, gripping the edge of the console as her surroundings shifted. She was no longer in the outpost. She was on Earth. But it wasn't the Earth she remembered. The sky was dark, choked with storm clouds that swirled unnaturally. Massive organic structures towered over the ruins of cities, their surfaces pulsing with the same iridescent patterns as the tunnels. Tendrils snaked through the streets, entwining with the shattered remains of human buildings. The air was thick with an acrid smell, and the distant sound of something vast and alive echoed through the atmosphere. She saw people, or what was left of them. Their bodies were warped, their limbs elongated, their skin translucent and veined like the creatures in the tunnel. They moved in jerky, unnatural motions, their faces blank and devoid of emotion. Black fluid dripped from their mouths and eyes, pooling on the ground where it seemed to writhe on its own. "Elena!" Vance's voice jolted her back to reality. She was back in the outpost, the walls no longer shimmering, but the oppressive energy remained. Garza was on his knees, clutching his head, his face pale and slick with sweat. "They're showing me," he gasped, "showing me what they'll do, what we'll become." "What did you see?" Vance demanded, gripping his shoulder. Garza's bloodshot eyes met his. "Earth. Gone. Taken. We're not just facing an invasion. They want to change us, to make us part of them." Elena's heart pounded as she pieced together what she had seen. The portal wasn't just a gateway, it was a harbinger. The creatures weren't invaders in the traditional sense. They didn't want to conquer Earth, they wanted to assimilate it. Before she could voice her thoughts, the shimmering began again. This time it wasn't just a vision. The outpost walls rippled, and black veins spread across the floor, creeping toward them like living roots. The generator's hum faltered, replaced by a low, resonant sound that grew louder with every passing second. Shadows gathered in the corners of the room, growing darker, deeper, until they began to take shape. "Helena!" Garza's voice was barely a whisper. She turned to see him convulsing, black veins spidering up his neck and across his face. His skin bubbled, his veins writhing as if alive. His eyes rolled back into his head as he let out a guttural scream that morphed into a distorted alien sound. "Get away from him!" Vance shouted, grabbing Elena and pulling her back. Garza's body twisted and contorted, his limbs elongating, his spine arching at impossible angles. Black tendrils burst from his chest, curling and rooting into the ground. Within moments he was no longer human, a grotesque hybrid of flesh and alien biology, his face frozen in a silent scream. "Run," Vance ordered. They fled the lab, the sound of the creature that had once been Garza echoing behind them. The outpost corridors were no longer familiar. The walls pulsed with organic patterns, the air thick and stifling. As they ran, more visions struck. Flashes of Earth consumed by alien life, humanity twisted into abominations, the planet's surface unrecognizable. Elena stumbled, gripping the wall for support. "We have to stop this," she said, her voice shaky but determined. "The portal. It's the source. If we don't destroy it, this will spread to Earth." "And how do you propose we destroy it?" Vance snapped. "Our weapons barely scratch those things." Elena's mind raced. The fusion core. They had brought it to power the outpost and their equipment, but it could be repurposed, turned into a bomb powerful enough to collapse the tunnels and destroy the portal. "We use the core," she said. "We overload it and detonate it near the portal." "That's suicide," Vance replied, his tone harsh but his eyes betraying his fear. "And even if we succeed, we'll never get off this planet alive." Elena met his gaze, determination hardening her features. "If we don't, there won't be a planet left to save." Vance hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, let's do it." As they prepared to make their final descent into the tunnels, the visions continued to haunt them. Elena saw herself among the twisted masses on Earth, her body no longer her own, her mind consumed by the hive consciousness of the alien invaders. She clenched her fists, steeling herself against the fear. There was no room for hesitation. They were humanity's last chance. The tunnel entrance loomed before them, pulsing faintly as though aware of their return. The walls seemed closer than before, alive with veins of black fluid that moved sluggishly, feeding the monstrous entity at its core. Dr. Elena Kale adjusted her pack, the weight of the fusion core a constant reminder of the choice she had made. Captain Marcus Vance and the last remaining engineer, Alan, flanked her. Their faces were pale and gaunt, their eyes hollow from the horrors they had endured. None of them spoke. There was nothing left to say. They knew what was waiting for them in the depths of the labyrinth. The air grew heavier as they descended, the oppressive hum growing louder with each step. Elena's mind raced with memories of Earth, the blue skies, the laughter of children, the smell of rain on concrete. It all felt impossibly distant, a world she might never see again. She tightened her grip on the detonator in her hand. If she couldn't save herself, she could still save them. "It's close," Vance muttered, his voice low and tense. His weapon was raised, his finger hovering over the trigger. The tunnel around them seemed to tighten, the walls rippling as though sensing their intrusion. Elena nodded, her gaze fixed ahead. "Stay focused. No matter what happens, we have to reach the chamber." The tunnel opened into the massive chamber they had discovered before. The portal stood at its center, a monolithic structure that pulsed with a sinister light. Tendrils snaked along the ground and up the walls, converging on the shimmering surface. The air was thick with an acrid smell, a mix of ozone and decay. And the creature was waiting. It was larger now, its grotesque form fully emerged from the portal. Its elongated limbs twitched, its translucent skin glistening in the dim light. The head tilted toward them, hollow sockets where eyes should have been. Its mouth opened slowly, splitting across its face to reveal a writhing mass of black tendrils. Alan froze. "Oh, God," he whispered, stepping back. The creature let out a guttural sound, low and resonant, shaking the ground beneath them. The tendrils along the walls began to move, slithering toward the team like living shadows. "Move!" Vance shouted, firing his weapon. Plasma bolts lit up the chamber, striking the creature's body. Chunks of translucent flesh burned away, but the creature barely flinched. The tendrils surged forward, slamming into the ground where Alan had been standing. He screamed, his leg caught in their grasp, and they pulled him toward the portal. "Alan!" Elena screamed, reaching for him. "No!" Vance grabbed her arm, dragging her back. "We can't save him!" Alan's screams were cut short as the tendrils enveloped him, his body contorting violently before merging into the writhing mass. Elena turned away, bile rising in her throat. She forced herself to focus. There was no time for grief. The creature advanced, its movements jerky but fast. Vance emptied his weapon, the plasma bolts slowing it down but doing little else. Elena sprinted toward the portal, the fusion core strapped to her back, thrumming with power. She skidded to a stop at the base of the monolith, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "Elena!" Vance's voice was desperate. "You don't have to do this." She glanced back at him, her heart breaking at the anguish in his face. "Yes, I do. If this thing reaches Earth, there won't be anything left to fight for." Vance took a step toward her, but the creature was between them now, its tendrils lashing out. One struck Vance, knocking him to the ground. He fired blindly, the bolts lighting up the chamber like desperate flares. Elena turned back to the fusion core, her fingers trembling as she activated the countdown. 2 minutes. The hum of the device grew louder, merging with the rhythm of the portal. She looked up at the shimmering surface, its ripples hypnotic. For a moment she thought she saw Earth reflected in it. Not the ruined version from her visions, but the Earth she remembered, whole and alive. The creature let out a deafening roar, sensing the danger. It lunged toward her, its grotesque limbs reaching out. Elena grabbed a plasma cutter from her belt, swinging it in a wide arc. The blade hissed as it sliced through the nearest tendrils, black fluid spraying across her suit. The creature recoiled, but didn't stop. "Elena!" Vance shouted, still firing. "You have to go." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "It has to be me. If I leave, it'll stop the countdown." The creature was on her now, its tendrils coiling around her legs, pulling her toward the portal. Pain shot through her body as the tendrils pierced her suit, the black veins spreading up her skin. She screamed but didn't let go of the detonator. "Elena!" Vance's voice cracked, his weapon finally overheating. He threw it aside and charged at the creature, grabbing one of its tendrils and pulling with all his strength. It didn't even register him. The timer ticked down. 30 seconds. Elena looked at Vance, her vision blurring. "Get out of here," she whispered. "No!" he yelled, his fists pounding against the tendrils. "I'm not leaving you." The creature's face was inches from hers now, its mouth opening impossibly wide. She could feel its breath, hot and foul, as it prepared to consume her. With the last of her strength, she pressed the override button, locking the countdown. "Go!" she screamed. Vance hesitated, then backed away, his face a mask of anguish. He turned and ran, his footsteps fading into the distance. The timer hit 0. The fusion core erupted in a blinding flash, the shockwave tearing through the chamber. The creature let out a final, deafening screech as the explosion consumed it. The portal collapsed, its shimmering surface imploding as the energy from the core overwhelmed it. The tunnels shook violently, the walls crumbling inward. On the surface, Vance stumbled out of the tunnel, falling to his knees as the ground buckled beneath him. He turned back, watching as the entrance collapsed, sealing the horrors below forever. The hum was gone. The oppressive weight in the air had lifted, but the silence was unbearable. Vance looked up at the Martian sky, his vision blurred by tears. Elena's face filled his mind, her determination, her bravery, her sacrifice. She had saved them, saved Earth, but at a cost he could never repay. He rose slowly, his body battered but alive. With the outpost destroyed and their communications severed, he was alone now. But he would make it back to Earth. He had to. Someone needed to tell the world what she had done. As he took his first step toward the rover, a faint vibration under his boots made him pause. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. A rhythmic pulse like a distant heartbeat. He froze, his breath catching in his throat. It wasn't over.